Listen, here's a little window into reality here, okay? It's going to take time. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be complicated finding out what happened with this building in South Florida. I can't even get straight with my own team. I'm surprised to hear information. They heard it before. This is one team. Think about all the different layers that are going to be a part of this investigation. You got the state attorney, you're going to have the feds involved, you're going to have the municipality, you got North Miami Beach here, you got Surfside right next to it, you got the commissioner who was just on. She wants a set of minutes. We may have the minutes from somebody else. We didn't even know. Yeah, this is going to be complicated. And that's why the state has to own it and put together a team that is the clearinghouse for everything. If you do it scattershot, if you do it piecemeal, it's going to get screwed up. People are going to get angry. There's going to be bad information and false suggestions. And we know it now, okay? And that's why I hope that the people who are in charge understand that there is one right way to do this. Now, when we turn our attention back to the actual tower, there is a telling line in that April letter to residents of Surfside's Champlain Tower South. Quote, "A lot of this work could have been planned or done for in years gone by, but this is where we are now." What does that mean? In the time between the 2018 report and that letter, the cost ballooned nearly 70%. Why? Well, the letter blames rising construction costs. The costs for all sectors of construction in the area only rose about 12.9%. I mean, that's a lot to go up 12, 13%. But why did the problems get that much more expensive in 3 years? Let's try to get some perspective on that. And how do we understand the language in these reports? Somebody who writes them, somebody who studies them, somebody who does the investigating. Structural engineer, familiar with the building that fell, Greg Batista. Thank you for coming back.
Good evening.
First, help me with the money. This got much more expensive. The condo lawyer told us, hey, they could have had cash reserves. The board members, they kept voting it down, so they needed to do a major assessment. It took them more time to raise the money. Is that what they're talking about, or was there some fixed cost or some shortage of suppliers to do this kind of work that ballooned expenses?
Well, being a contractor and an engineer, I can speak to this. Let's just assume just for a second, and this is a big assumption, that it's exactly the same scope of work, because if you have a price on a set date and then 3 years later you have another price, maybe they added windows, maybe they added waterproofing.
Maybe
or
it got
paint.
worse.
But exactly, and that's what I'm getting at. So let's just make the assumption that everything's equal, that they're both the same scope of work. It is a fact that the concrete repair and the spalling and the fact that the reinforcing steel inside the concrete worsens over time, and it's a geometrical increase in the damage that happens to the concrete. So if you have on year number one, you have a repair that's worth $100. Year number two, it's going to be worth $200. Year number three, it's going to magnify. So it's not a straight line. It's $1 year one, $2 year two, $3 year three. It goes up geometrically. So I'm not at all surprised. Even with inflation and with the cost of construction going up, it's no surprise at all to me.
All right, two other issues. One, knowing what you know about this building, what is your reckoning of why the repairs weren't done when they were supposed to be? What was your experience working with them?
Well, this building is sort of an anomaly. I'm used to doing 40-year certifications when the building department asks for it, which in this case would have been the year 2021. These people had the foresight, for whatever reason, maybe they already saw the damages, that they chose to do it 3 years before, ahead of time. So if when they saw the damages, they should have immediately jumped on it and done something about it. But it's very complex, the all the different pieces that go into play, as far as banks and assessments and the people getting upset, not willing to pay, and the financial status of those that are involved. It's a very complex situation.
One other thing. How are we supposed to understand this language? When we hear the language in these reports, significant structural deterioration, people saying things that sound scary to a layperson. But then we heard, I think, one of the engineers from your own shop who had done some of this saying, yeah, this is what we're accustomed to seeing when we do these kinds of reviews. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to figure out why this board wasn't scared out of their wits by this report. Is that because the language doesn't mean in the vocabulary of this kind of work what it sounds like to the rest of us?
Look, when an engineer says that something needs to be done and that this is dangerous, and it calls attention to that they don't need to get into an alarmist language. At least I don't do that. I've seen many concrete damages where I do use that same language. But if it comes to the point where it is life-threatening, that is up to the engineer's judgment to use that strong language. But either way, if the engineer said that this is a dangerous situation, they should have taken him in at his word at it. And I mean, and to me, that's it. I've been in many situations where I've used that language, and the boards, for whatever reason, they want to kick the can down the road. We can't afford it, et cetera, et cetera. The engineers' hands are pretty much tied as far as in being able to enforce any action on the part of the boards.
Right. And just to be clear, that's not you I'm talking about. You just have familiarity with the building. This wasn't you who was dealing with this board. But I tell you one thing, Greg, we know one thing now. It can't just be that the engineer in this situation has a duty to tell the board. From now, there has to be a rule that you got to tell the municipality. If you see something that is that much of a concern and the board doesn't seem to get it, it has to be reported. And I can't believe that's not the requirement now.
And I've done it before, Chris. I've been in situations where I've deemed that the damages, and again, it goes back to what the Florida rules say, that is the engineering judgment, that it is the engineer that is empowered by law to be able to say these things. But in certain cases, I've seen damages that are so extensive that I have had to call the building department and tell them, look, you guys need to do something about this, and in very strong language. And ultimately, they are the ones that are empowered by law and the building official to come down on them and use whatever resources they have at hand to enforce it.
I still think there's got to be a more direct chain of accountability, that an engineer should have to do it every time. Of course, it's on the building department, but we're going to learn about that process, and I guarantee you things are going to change. Greg Battista, I appreciate you. I'll have you back again. All right, so this tragedy comes as the fate of infrastructure in this country is uncertain. Now, look, I know you guys have been jumping on me about this, and I kind of understand it. I'm not saying that if Biden passes his bill, this building doesn't fall down next time. Nobody's saying anything that's stupid. What I'm saying is that infrastructure matters. That's all, okay? It matters because a lot of things are in the state of disrepair that this building was. I've watched bridges fall in this country and dealt with the aftermath of it. I've been there. I was there for I-35 in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and watched that happen and saw the lives taken. It's real. It happens. Infrastructure matters. And not just because of this building, but this building is an example of what can happen. Biden is pushing his deal in Wisconsin today. So does this add urgency? Or is the really big problem not the reality of what we all know, but the politics of getting it done? Let's bring in a progressive Democrat in the House. The Democrats going to make it easier or harder? Next.
My auntie called me. She said, Uncle's had a heart attack. I needed him to be here.
Your heart isn't just yours. Protect it with Bayer Aspirin. Be sure to talk to your doctor before you begin an aspirin regimen.
The moment Proactiv started working, I felt relieved, empowered.
Get that clear skin feeling with our 3 skincare systems. Proactiv's got clinically proven ingredients to clear skin and dermatologist tested to be gentle. Subscribe today, risk-free at Proactiv.com, and get this free charcoal brush.
The all-new Sandals Montego Bay, Jamaica's newest and hottest resort.